Hey, you know what? NVS fins. Guess what we're going to be riding when we go to El Salvador?
Oh, I know what we're writing because they sent us a community set of fins, actually.
Nice.
I know. So, in addition to fins that you and I are bringing for our own boards, they looked at the list of surfboards that our listeners are bringing on the trip, and they're like, you guys could use a set of Josh Hall quads. There's a couple people bringing quads, a couple people bringing twins. So, they sent a set of Taylor Knox Arc twins, and then a set of Timmy Patterson thrusters for those riding thrusters.
Unreal. I love those arc fins, those Taylor Knox arc fins. They're pretty loosey goosey.
I love them too. And what's cool about Jamin and Leif at NVS is they, at the end of the email with the package list, they're like, hey, leave the fins down there if you want. Like, we know that crew of, the guys who drive you around, they all surf. And so they could probably use some new fins, leave them with them, leave them behind.
Nice.
So
Well, NVS fins, that's our go-to and has been for a long time. So we highly recommend them.
totally. And these are all Apex series. So G10 construction, lifetime guarantee on those. So go check them out, surfnvs.com. And then, of course, Real Water Sports as well. We talked about their springtime sale last week. Go and get that at realwatersports.com. Discounts on everything, foil gears, accessories like board bags, surfboards, all of it.
Yeah, and like as I gear up for a trip here, there's little teeny things that I need, like things that I normally don't think about, like sunscreen, for instance, is a great
Mhm.
example, a rash guard, and Real Water Sports is your one-stop shop for that stuff too. Travel, the ancillary items on your travel list.
Great call. Yeah, everything you need for the water, not just surfing, but any water sport at realwatersports.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
Yeah, guy. David, welcome. It is Wednesday, March 26th, and this is the Spit podcast. We talk all things surf. Scott Bass, David Lee Scales with you here. And my face is a little bit red from the Effudex precancerous skin cream my dermatologist has had me put on, but it'll be fine. And I'm getting my sunscreen from Real Water Sports. David, good morning.
Good morning, Scott Bass. We're mere days away, for those not keeping track, days away from El Salvador with our listeners. You, myself, and 18 of our closest new friends.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. And the forecast looks pretty good. It looks like solid 3 to 4 feet, rippable waves, which is always good I keep my expectations super low and I just want to get a couple waves and do a couple big turns. And yeah, I'm excited about it all.
What's your packing routine? Are you currently packing or do you wait until the last moment?
Yeah, I'm going to be last minute Larry there.
Me too.
But I have purchased some things like we mentioned earlier in the show that from your list that you sent in, like I did get a first aid kit, which I thought was just kind of a good call, and some other little items that you might not think about. Things like a headlamp. You don't need a headlamp down there, but that's always a good one. Like there's these little things like an adapter for the plugs. Are you and I going to be doing a podcast down
Definitely.
there? Okay. So I need to bring a microphone.
Please. Yeah. I'll bring backups, let's say. Don't depend on me. Bring your own.
I
But
might
we'll
bring this one, like a handheld.
what does that plug into? Directly into your laptop?
No, it plugs into an adapter, which goes into my laptop.
Well, yeah, just bring whatever you need to
Yeah.
operate individually, and then we'll cobble it together. Um, Great advice, though. The headlamp's a great one. We should come up with a list. This can be a PSA for listeners. But yeah, the first aid kit I got, it's just a small portable one. It's $10, I think, or $12. It has the basics in there. Last year I didn't even use it, but it's good to have on hand if you do need it. Um,
Like red eye flights type stuff. Like I've got the mask for your eyes, and it's good to have some earplugs or have your pods in your ears. Um,
two
that kind
pairs. I'd bring more than one pair of sandals, like flip flop cheapies that you can bring down to the beach and then leave. Or if they get washed away or something like that or stolen, you don't have to worry about it. You just don't want to be down there with only one pair and then you lose a pair or something happens and you're out and you're barefoot. Those rocks, those cobblestones are scorching.
Good call. Got to have some backup sandals for sure.
Backup leash, couple leashes. Did you decide on bringing a foil or not?
I'm, s- I think I am.
Okay,
Um, and I'm kind of hoping that those guys can kind of drive me to some other locations where it might be more like super shitty for surfing, but it could be good for foiling, you know.
for
We'll see.
sure they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're dialed. I'm bringing a pair of in addition to two boards, I'm going to bring a pair of swim fins and that inflatable mat that I got.
Oh, that's going to be good. Between me on a foil and you on a mat, we're going to be cooking it out pretty good.
Totally. Totally. I just don't, the thing is it packs so small. I
Right.
don't want to not have it. If there's a moment in the day or where I'm like, that would be the perfect move and I don't have it, I'm going to kick myself. So
Yeah.
why not just deflate it and bring it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it could double as a pillow if needed.
Yeah. That's cool.
Well, I just, yeah, I want to say thank you to NVS for sending the fins down. Trees Wax actually shipped me a case of wax. They last year they sent some warm water wax and we gave them feedback on it. It was really hard or hard to get off the board. Like it worked, but it was hard to get off the board. So we sent that feedback to him. He's reformulated it. He actually did a trip down to El Salvador himself in the interim. And so he's got a new formula that he says is amazing. So we've got a box of trees wax we're bringing.
Well, thank you, Christian, for doing that. We appreciate all your support for the show. Treeswax.com. Check them out.
And incidentally,
Yeah.
didn't even dawn on me until people started asking me, but the WSL is going to be down there at the same time we are.
Oh, that sucks, actually.
Well, they're 3 hours away.
No, it's more about the flights. Like there'll just be way more people on the flights.
Oh yeah. Well, probably see some pros.
Uh,
Um,
I don't want to see the press.
come on, man, get your photo taken, get an autograph or two.
No, no. Who's the one
What?
pro that you would go fanboy on and go, hey, can I get a selfie with you? Is there one?
I wouldn't ask for a selfie, but there's a couple I would fanboy on.
Yeah. What
Um,
does that mean? What does that look like? Manifest fanboy for me. What am I seeing if you fanboy out?
nervousness.
Nervousness.
It'll
Yeah.
be dead straight face. Like I won't make an expression. I'll just be incredibly quiet and nervous, which is not my normal self.
That's
Um,
such a great characterization of what it is, huh? Like you're just like, don't
did
want to
I
say anything stupid.
did I tell you last time I was at the Florida Surf Film Festival, this was just a few months ago, Tom Curren came up to me?
Yeah, you did mention that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was one where it actually had, now that I think about it, I had the opposite approach. I did full like vomit of the mouth, like full like just vomiting words, like, hey, Tom, like asking him a bunch of questions, telling him a bunch
Yeah.
of stories. I
Yeah.
think I might have overwhelmed him.
Yeah, it's such a weird phenomenon, right? I mean, the funny thing is that our heroes rarely live up to what we envision. Um, and but Tom's just hard to talk to in general. You know, he's a super nice guy, by the way. I'm not here to, but you know, there's some people that are more approachable, but for sure, you nailed it. Like that's kind of the like how it manifests itself. Fanboyism, it manifests itself in sort of stoic quietness because you're afraid to say anything silly. But that whole concept, you know what? Their excrement smells as well. You know what I'm saying?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Uh, but so I don't know what I told you about that encounter, but he walked up to me and put his hand out and said, hey, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Tom. And I was like, so that's what threw me off because we were at Kevin Miller's house or condo. So there was only about 15 people, let's say. It wasn't like at a big party. It was just like 15 people or something. And I saw him in the room. He was talking to some other people. And I was talking to Holly Beck and a couple of other people. And he walked up and interrupted our little semicircle and just put his hand out to me specifically and was like, hey, I
Yeah.
just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Tom. And so then I started doing this calculus in my head where I'm like, wait a second. Does he know who I am? Like, is there some chance that he's a podcast listener and that's why he's introducing himself?
Yeah, that's what
Or
it is.
no, because the flip side is a much more kind of humble thing, which is humble on my behalf, which is he's said hi to everybody else in this party, and he's going out of his way to say hi to me because he knows we haven't said hi yet, and he knows that I know who he is, and he doesn't want to make it awkward by ignoring me. So he's doing the right thing by just introducing himself like he would to any stranger.
Right.
And by the end of the weekend, because I spent the whole weekend with him, I had no idea which was accurate. I don't know if he knew who I was or not, but he was totally friendly and affable enough to be like we knew each other.
Yeah.
But I just never got my answer that I was
No.
looking for.
Well, yeah, my initial thought was maybe he wants you to do an interview. That was kind of my initial, but that's not like Tom. He doesn't.
Definitely not. And I waited. I didn't want to ask him for an interview that weekend, so I waited until a week or two after getting home, and I went through his management because I got his management's contact, and I was like, "Hey, dude, can I reach out to Tom? I would love to do an interview with him." And I emailed him and his wife. Never heard back.
Yeah.
So I think that wasn't what he was looking for.
Right. Right. Well, Tom's a super cool guy, and I've had many interactions with him, and they've all been positive. And luckily for me, it's usually been around an event that I produce, either the vintage surf auction. I used to do those live events where we had the boards and the auction actually took place in person, or the boardroom show. And at each of those things, I always have a reason to engage with Tom. Like there's
Yeah.
something that I'm asking him to do, or he's going to play music or whatever it is. And so it's much easier to interact because there's a reason. I have a line of a narrative that makes sense for the conversation.
That does make it way easier.
Yeah.
But we're very fortunate, by the way, to work in this space that we feel so passionately about, to where we're exposed to those people and get to spend quality time with them for a purpose. Like Bob McTavish, at the Boardroom show last year.
He might be, it's so funny because then your line of thought there had me thinking, well, who's the greatest so-called celebrity surf person that I've ever encountered? And I've met some greats, and they're all really good. But I mean, there's been some that are just like really great human beings, and Bob McTavish is one of those. And Wayne Lynch comes to mind. And I don't want to go down the list and be like I'm bragging or anything, but you're right. We're both in a really cool place where we get to meet some of our quote unquote heroes.
So the other detail to that I've found to be very validating is some of them do listen to the podcasts. And so when I've met them and they're somebody who I respect and whose work I appreciate, they respond with like, "Oh, I've been listening for years." And so it cuts out all of the getting to know you stuff. Like they know my wife's name. They know like way more about me than a stranger would. And so you're able to connect kind of on a friend level immediately. And of course, you have this shared interest of surfing. So you're able to connect on that level, but it really does. It integrates you. You're like, "Oh, I totally know you, even though we've met." And they're like, "I totally know you, even though we've never met." And so you just jump right into it like you've been friends for 5 years, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That is, yeah, I'm with you. Well, look, we've got a bit of a show here. I have a Who Said That? And we have results from the latest WSL event in Portugal. It was hard to watch because it was during a weird time frame for us here in the North America. And I don't think the waves were that good. I actually didn't watch any of it. I mean, I might have peeked at a few heats. I did definitely peek at a few heats, but it didn't seem all that great.
Yeah, I did not watch. I barely peeked at a couple heats, like turned it on to see that it was crappy and then turned it off. But I did see, the best waves written via Instagram.
And then I'm interested in your thoughts on who's winning Instagram right now, like in the last, maybe let's call it a week, who's winning Instagram, because I have my thoughts on that as well.
Okay.
But let me get to Who Said That, David. This is where I quote a famous surfer, and you and the listeners quickly try to determine who it is that I am quoting.
Let's rephrase that. You quote a famous surfer, and then I fail to guess who it is. That's the accurate explanation.
Yeah, you've done, I don't know what the stats are, but you're doing okay. All right. Well, David, here we go. And listeners, who said that? And I quote, "You have to be good looking to be able to speak. You got to have gonads, you know? You have to take chances. You got to be confident. You got to have ego. It's a dirty word, ego, but the fact is, if you don't have it, you won't get all the way to the top. I loved the fame. I fucking danced on tabletops after the contest. If I could have hung out with Bob Dylan, great. Who said that, David? Was it A, Rabbit Bartholomew, B, Gary Elkerton, C, Peter Townend, or D, Bunker Spreckles?
Man, really tough. I'm gonna go Rabbit.
Yeah, that's a good choice, but you're wrong. Sorry, bud, you're wrong. That was Peter Townend. Peter Townend said that in a 1990 interview for the Surfers Journal.
Yeah,
PT, the first ASP world champion, world tour champion.
I can guess that year, 1976.
I think it's 75.
Is it? Oh.
But it could be 76. It's
Hmm.
probably 76.
Hmm.
Let's go. 76 and 77 was Sean. 78 was Rabbit. And then 79 was MR through 82. 79, 80, 81, and 82 was MR. And 83, I'm going to suggest to you, might have been Tom Carroll.
Or Derek Ho.
No, that was more like 89 or something.
Oh, yeah.
And then 84, I don't know. Now we're getting into some areas that could be like when Damien Hardman or no, Damien Hardman was like 87, 88. 84. I don't know. It's somebody knows.
Well, I'm just looking up PT's world title year. 1976, as I stated, Peter Townend became the very first world champion of surfing at the age of 23.
Well, there you go.
Take that. What was the question one? 1983?
84 was the one I didn't quite know. Here, I got a complete list right here. So
Yeah,
we
you're
were
right.
correct up to Tom Carroll in 83, then Tom Carroll again in 84, then Tom Curren 85, Tom Curren 86, Damien Hardman 87, 88, Barton Lynch 88, Martin Potter 89, Tom Curren 1990. That was the trials to championship year. Then Damien Hardman again in 91. And then we get on a bit of a Kelly Slater roll. 92, Kelly Slater, 93, Derek Ho.
That's what I was thinking. 93, not 83. Yeah.
And 94 through 98 was Kelly Slater. Then Kelly semi-retired. Aki won in 99. His comeback year, Sonny Garcia in 2000. CJ Hobgood in 2001. I have some news about CJ for later in the show. Then Andy Aarons went on a run, 2002 through 4. Then Kelly Slater again, 5 and 6. Then Mick Fanning in 7. Kelly Slater again in 2008. Mick Fanning again in 2009. Kelly Slater 10 and 11. Joel Parkinson, Mick Fanning, Gabe Medina in 2014. And that's where and we got Adrian D'Souza, John Florence, Gabe Medina, Idolo Ferreira, Gabe Medina, Felipe Toledo, John Florence. Okay.
Got it.
Don't mean to bore everyone. I won't even go through the women's list.
Well, what's the Peter Townend tie-in? Do you have a board?
No, there's no tie-in this time. I just
Oh.
decided to pick who said that quote, which I thought was kind of a fun quote, dancing on the tables.
So I would be curious if you know the answer to this trivia question. I do not know the answer. What's his obsession with pink?
I don't know the answer, the form, like the real, his definition of that obsession, but I would suggest to you that it was just a way of standing out. PT was really big on, raising above, the tall, be the tall poppy, in a sea of poppies, be the tall poppy. And I think the pink helped that happen.
But he's still wearing it.
And,
So there's got to be a
he's got to
reason.
wear a brighter color.
There's got to be a reason other than what you just stated. I think that he used pink for that reason, but like, why pink? You know what I mean?
Well, I
Like,
mean, obviously PT would tell you,
yeah.
You know who, Darren Brillhart probably knows, like everyone, there's people out there that know what PT would say.
Yeah.
I haven't seen PT in a long time. I see him every year at the Boardroom show, but I haven't seen him in a while. I hope he's doing okay.
Me neither. I'm sure he's around. Cool. Well, that I was gonna, while we're in El Salvador, obviously the WSL event is gonna go there, and I wanted to ask your survival pick, but should we wrap up the Portugal comp coverage before
Yes.
we get into El
Yeah, go
Salvador?
ahead. Go ahead with your thoughts on Portugal. I don't have many.
Well, no, me neither, but Yago wins over Italo. This actually jumps Yago 11 spots forward
Yes.
into fourth position. So
Yeah.
Yago is now sitting in the top five, which for
I
the
love
finals day at Cloudbreak, that really, really adds a lot more excitement.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would be with the five as they are right now, I'd be fine. I'd be super excited to watch the five as they are right now, which are Elo, Baron Mamiya, Ethan Ewing, Yagodora, and Rio Wada.
So Rio Wada was one person I did not expect to see sitting in the top five. At the beginning of the season, I wouldn't have mentioned him in the top 18 probably. So that's really surprising.
Yeah, I agree. This felt like it could have been a year where, okay, Rio had a year and a half or whatever. He did 2 years on tour or whatever. He made a bit of a splash and he was definitely formative in certain events. But it also, you could have easily seen Rio fading away and going back to Indo and winning the Rip Curl Cup at Padang Padang year after year, you know.
What about how surprised are you to see Barron sitting in second?
I'm fairly surprised actually, and pleased. I'm stoked for Barron. You know, Barron's the type of surfer that the tour doesn't necessarily lend itself to his what he's best at, I guess I
Yeah.
would say, which is pipeline, big left tubes. His backside tube riding is going to be second to none. He's right up there with the top guys like Jack Robinson and I would say Gabe is an excellent backside tube rider. Um, So I, I hope it continues. He obviously failed pretty hard at the Dubai wave pool event, which doesn't surprise anyone. That's not where real surfing takes place, in our opinion. And so, you know what? He goes to El Salvador. This will actually be an interesting test because now we're in the ocean, but we're not in necessarily like a wave that you would say, oh, this fits Baron Mamiya's style. Like Baron Mamiya is like Sunset Beach, Haleiwa, Pipeline, Chopu, Cloudbreak, G-Land, waves of consequence that are immediately going to separate some of the guys just based on they don't have the the expertise or the comfortable level that you need in waves of consequence.
I'm thrilled to see Barron in second position. I actually I am surprised, but it's only because I expected him to be there all along. Like I expected him to be in the top five since he qualified for the tour. And so I guess the surprise is that he hasn't been in that position before. So it's great to see him there now. And I hope that he can maintain. And I do think he has the small wave prowess in good waves or small, like, El Salvador point break type waves, even if they aren't overhead. But you know, we'll see what happens. He's also got to contend with the Felipes of the world and the Griffin Colapintos. So I do think you're right. His strengths are big waves, but I still think he can perform there. So I think he's also a threat at Cloudbreak. So love to see him in the top five going into that event.
Yeah, I would, like I said, be stoked to see this top five in the Cloudbreak event. Of course, we want Jack to move in there. If Jack moves in there, one of those five has to leave. Who would you want to see Jack? Whose place would you want Jack to take? I guess I should say.
Rio. Sorry, Rio.
Yeah, I guess so. Wow. All right.
But Jack, I mean, I'd way rather watch Jack surf than Rio.
Yeah.
Also very surprised to see, not very, but Leonardo Fioravanti in sixth position. He was in the fifth position prior to this event, but he's a contender. He's right there.
Yeah, Leonardo has that thing between the ears that is hard to get. Like to me, Leo is like I mean, let's just call it how it is. He's a veteran. He's an absolute tour veteran. And so he's seen it all. He's been all around the world. He's seen every wave. He's ridden every wave. He's been on and off the tour. He's mature. He's probably married with a kid now. And he's kind of got that mindset where like everything's in place, like everything's comfortable. There's no uncomfortable situation for Leonardo. You know what I mean?
Agreed. Yeah.
So I see him, not that he's like, my favorite surfer in the world as far as style or whatever, but he's obviously one of the top surfers in the world. And if Leo made it into the top five, Leo to me, I bet he's like a thorn. Like if you draw Leo in a heat, you're like, oh God, it's like drawing Todd Holland or something. It's just like, he's just going to be, and it's like Richie Collins. It's like, he's going to be a nightmare to deal with.
Mhm.
Like, he's in the back of your head.
So that makes me think about using him for El Salvador.
Yeah, you know what? Good call.
He's looking strong this year. He's unflappable. I mean, is he almost guaranteed to make the round of 16, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know how to judge people's, especially Leo's, how he did at Abu Dhabi in the wave pool. Like if you look at his results, there's been three. The one bad one's the wave pool. And I think to myself, okay, well, that's like a 3 foot right, which is kind of what El Salvador is going to be, like a 3 foot kind of spongy right where you're going to be doing you're going to be doing fin free.
No, apples and oranges. You have to go back and look at his results at El Salvador.
Okay. What do you
That's
see?
what you got to do. I don't know. I don't have the time
Haven't
to
done
do
that? What? Well,
it. Well,
I don't know. I mean, like I said, Leo can do well at any spot. That's the bottom line. And so in that regards,
yeah.
he's a good survival pick.
So I've already burned or I've already used Canoa at Pipe, Italo at the Wave Pool, and then Felipe in Portugal. So I'm still in the running for El Salvador, and now I have to decide whether or not to use Griffin Colapinto. Griffin Colapinto is my safe pick for El Salvador, and he is
And it's
now,
like a make or break event for him too.
I know.
Like talk about pressure. He does great under pressure, by the way.
I,
Griffin
I'm
does
I'm
really.
inclined to pick him, but I'm also inclined like the Leo pick feels maybe save Leo because Leo is safe anywhere basically. So I can
I feel
use
like
Leo
the
down the
Felipe
road.
Toledo pick is the pick.
I already used him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that part. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you can use him now.
I might use him
Hmm.
begrudgingly. It's
Yeah,
hard to use somebody you don't, you know, I don't know, whatever.
that's what makes survival so fun is you find yourself rooting against yourself.
Let me throw a wild card at you for survival.
Okay,
Joel Vaughan from Australia. He's got three of the same results in a row, ninth place 3 times in a row. He is a rookie on tour, which is weird. When you go to El Salvador, it's one of those spots that, let's be clear, it's a little bit third world. And so it's not like, going to Europe for an event or going to Australia or going to Hawaii where there's some amenities that, like, so has Joel Vaughn ever been to Latin America? I don't know. I'm sure he probably has for some like ISA event or something.
I don't know. Yeah, for Australians, it's a lot harder to get to. For Americans, it's the easiest trip ever. But I mean, Joel Vaughn, I had him earmarked. He's my rookie of the year. I mean, he's in 11th position, which is great for a rookie. So he's the highest ranked rookie. But if you just look at his surfing through each of the events, he was a highlight surfer at all of them. Highlight at Pipeline. Even in Portugal, I watched some of his stuff. I was like, holy cow. So I did not expect that from him, and he's blown my mind.
Yeah, like I said, the one thing that sticks out is this, he's very consistent.
Yeah.
3 ninths says a lot,
Yeah.
especially for a rookie, as you mentioned. So that's a good point. So Joel Vaughn's sort of a wild card there,
Dark
uh,
horse.
dark horse for survival.
You pick him.
I'm not picking. This is where you go with the Philippe Toledo's. You go with I mean, I still haven't picked Ethan Ewing. I think Ethan Ewing is a pick.
Yeah, for sure. Ethan's a safe pick for El Salvador.
Yeah.
Also in a world title contention, so he will bring his A game for sure. But
Yeah.
it'll be cool. I mean, despite the crowded flights, like you stated, it's cool. I'm glad that we're going to be there while they're there. Be able to watch the
Yeah.
El Salvador comp while we are in between sessions.
Yeah. That will be fun, right? We'll actually be pretty involved. As I look at the midseason cut line, I'm just so disappointed that Alan Cleland's not a little higher up.
I know you would be.
Surprised by Jiao Chianca, quite frankly.
He's coming
Um,
back from injury. Don't hold it against him.
okay. And then the others, I guess Matthew McGilvery is kind of a surprise, but
So I have a question for you about the mid-year cut. It's after event 7, which is bizarre to me. Like get it done early, like it's always been after Margaret, but now there's more events at the beginning of the season, so it's still after Margaret, but now it's after event 7 and there's only 11 events. So that only leaves 8, 9, 10, 4 events with the reduced numbers on tour. It's kind of a bummer.
yeah, I think from our standpoint, you and I, we like less surfers on tour. It just makes the events tighter and cleaner and easier to run in good waves. If you're a surfer, obviously you're stoked. I'm sure this came from the surfers. You get more opportunities if you have, like for Griffin, for example, if you struggle at the beginning, it's going to give you a chance to kind of get back up on your horse and get going and get some momentum. And so those are the two sides of the equation. It's yeah.
Too many chances for old Griff. It's like get the work done early. I mean, I'm surprised that after 3 events, I was thinking about, okay, who's at risk of getting cut off tour? And then I realized they still have 4 events left. This is inconsequential. The first 3 are essentially inconsequential because you can still make up for it with the next 4. So there's no, not having the consequence lessens the stakes.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of weird.
So, anyways, I had another thought, or a listener sent me a thought on the Julian conversation from last week when I was like, Julian got the wild cards into the Challenger Series, so he's going to try to requalify for tour. Somebody messaged and they go, look, I don't see him winning a world title, but this really could be an effort for him to qualify for the Olympics because I could see him qualifying for the Olympics, and that would be huge for his legacy. It would be great visibility for his brand, and maybe that's really what he's going for here.
Yeah, that's interesting thought.
Like, why not?
Yeah.
Why not give it a go for another 2 years just because the upside is so valuable for him and his personal brand. And I do feel like he is I mean, he could totally earn one of those spots.
Yeah, I mean, we shall see. That's an interesting way to look at it. I see you've done some deep thought on this, thinking ahead to the Olympics.
Like I said, it was a listener's deep thought, just regurgitating.
Well,
So
I guess that kind of wraps up. Do you want to talk about the women's side of
well,
the equation?
yeah, I mean, Caroline Marks wins over Gabriella Bryan. So congrats to Gabby. I did not anticipate her being in the final, but that's a big move for her. And then Caroline Marks reasserting her, um, position at the top, basically. She's not in first place, but position as a threat for a world title, anyways, while we were kind of busy focusing on Molly Picklum and Caitlin Simmers. Caroline, who was the young guard a short 2 years ago, has almost transitioned into being a veteran at this point, but she's reestablished her dominance and would be a safe bet at Cloudbreak as well.
Huh. All right. Well, I'm out of the survival in the women's. I think I lost out the very first event, so I haven't given it too much thought, but my fantasy team is going to be stacked with Caitlin Simmers as much as possible.
Yeah.
I can only use her once, but I'd put her in all spots if I could.
You and I both, I think, lost with Betty Lou, Sakura Johnson at Pipe.
Oh, we did, didn't we? Damn.
I think a lot of the field went down with that.
Well, okay, that wraps up our thoughts there. I do have some CJ Hobgood news just randomly.
Yeah, let's hear it.
World title in 2001, which was the year that 9/11 happened, and we cut the season short. But anyway, the East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame has announced that CJ Hobgood is joining their board, the board of directors of the East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame. And remarked President Gary Germain, the board or the Hall of Fame is committed to strengthening our board with individuals who bring both competitive experience and industry insight. CJ Hobgood was the clear choice. His achievements in professional surfing, deep connection to the East Coast community, and of course, CJ lives there now, I believe, and dedication to preserving the sport's history makes him an invaluable addition. We look forward to his leadership and contributions as we continue advancing the East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame initiatives for years to year. I've been lucky enough to be at a few of the East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame inductions. They happened during Surf Expo. And I've said this to you before, but they have a very tight-knit surfing community on the East Coast. And in some ways, I'm envious. I think it's cool. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the sense of community that seems to surround all of those surfers that live and that have history on the East Coast.
So yesterday I interviewed Jason Bort.
Oh, killer.
So I'm in the East Coast mindset right now, and he's Virginia Beach, obviously. But yeah, you and I on the West Coast, it's like when you think about the East Coast, you just kind of lump it all in sometimes. But when you actually focus on the individual communities, you realize exactly what you just said is like, not only are they tight knit, but they're so rich. And the reason I was interviewing Jason Board is he's working on a book. It's called Virginia's for Surfers. And it's the same, it's the bumper sticker that you've seen, but with the word lovers crossed out and the word
Yeah.
surfers instead. By the way, he's doing a Kickstarter for it. They're midway through the Kickstarter. So if you want to support that, go and support that. Um, and but he's interviewed, like 50 surfers in the community there, and they're not just the A West Lane, and the A-list pros that you've heard of. It's also school teacher who surfs occasionally, or a woodworker or whatever, just like the people that you see in the water every day, whether they shred or not. That's who's being interviewed for the book, just to represent exactly what you're talking about, to basically give you little vignettes into the people's lives who make up the surf community. And I was like, man, it's such a great idea. Virginia Beach is a perfect place to do it, but I would love to see that everywhere. Like, you could serialize this book and do it anywhere because they're all interesting figures.
Yeah, for sure. And Jason's a great writer, and yeah,
Intelligent.
look forward to seeing what he puts out there about the surf community in Virginia Beach, which has a ton of surf history.
It's
Believe it or
crazy.
not. Yeah,
It's really interesting how much has come from Virginia Beach, considering how marginal the surf is.
you put it nicely. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, people from Virginia Beach go to North Carolina to go surfing, I think.
Which is accessible. It's a 2 hours to get to Hatteras or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're actually building a wave pool there. The wave pool should be open this summer.
Oh, wow. Which kind of technology are they doing?
Wave Garden.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's called Atlantic Park, and Wave Garden has uh, developed their technology and their wave to. It's not just like the old one from Snowdonia that we used to see. There's like a barrel section and an air section and all that sort of stuff. So they have high hopes for that. And it's part of like a full retail, residential, like all of it. It's this huge compound. So they have high hopes for the development and there's so many tourists that come to Virginia Beach anyways, and it has the infrastructure for 1 million people a summer or whatever. It's just the surfers will now have access to a consistent wave. So it seems like a perfect location to do it.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. If there's one place I think that something like that, a development like that makes sense, it's Virginia Beach for sure. Like it's one thing to there's other places where like, I don't know, there's really good waves just down the street. Why would you do one there? But Virginia Beach
Yeah.
seems like there's a bunch of surfers and they're frothing for something to ride when it's not that good.
Yeah, exactly. It makes a ton of sense. And it's all built. I think they're filling the pool with water next month, and they're hoping to be open by the summertime. So it's in the
There's
final
quite a
stages.
few pools. Well, I know Palm Springs is getting built out with a couple of pools. I know you surfed that one, right? What's going on with that one, by the way? The Palm Springs Surf Club, is it called?
Yeah, it's wide open. People are going. People are going all the time.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. FanDuel.com/surf. When the games tip off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting and the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you miss the first few minutes of the game, or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can make your picks from the first whistle until the final buzzer. Plus, you can even combine your bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. New FanDuel customers get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/surf to join today. That's FanDuel.com/surf for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 and older and present in select states, or 18 and older and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. year. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800
Well, Dave, what else
327
do you got for me?
5050 for
I'm a little
24/7
lax. I'm a
support
little
in
slow today on
Massachusetts,
my
or call
production.
1-877 You remember this 8-HOPE-NY
magazine?
or text HOPE-NY
Yes, I was
in
a
New
part
York.
of producing it.
I thought that you were. So this is the big issue of Surfer Magazine from October 1999.
There's a big fight about putting him on the cover or
So
making that the cover shot.
so this
There
is
was
Duke Kahanamoku on the
big
cover.
turmoil within the office.
So this is Duke Kahanamoku on the cover for those who aren't watching the YouTube version. And he looks stately. He looks like a young man dressed up, going to college or something. It's a photo that I had never seen before, but is now iconic.
Yeah.
What was the controversy with putting him on the cover?
Well, as is always the case at surf magazines, there's the editorial department versus the advertising department. And Duke wasn't really sponsored by any of our advertisers.
Imagine.
You got the publisher and the ad sales guys underneath him all going, put the shot of Andy at Chopu, because that was always, it was weird. The big issue a lot of times had either Cloudbreak or Chopu big blue lefts on it because we got so many great photos during that time period when the big issue was coming out, or we sat for Chopu, we usually sat on something from the prior year. You could do that back then. You could sit on 6 months old photos of a spot and just, put them out later, but you can't do that these days. And that was another issue. I'd be going, wait a minute. The photo department would go, look at this photo of Andy at Chopu. And I'd be like, oh my God, let's put it on the website right now. Let's break with this thing. And they'd be like, no, we're waiting for 6 months. Don't tell anyone, and you're not allowed up here.
Yeah.
In the photo department. But so
So
yeah, that was the thing. Somebody wanted Andy Irons at Chopu or Cloud or whoever it was. And Evan Slater and I believe Chris Morrow might have been involved in it. For sure, Evan was just like, no way. This is the surfer of the century. This is the greatest photo we've ever seen of him. And there was, screaming matches that went down.
so makes
And
me
Evan won
admire
out. Huh?
makes me admire Evan even more. Because imagine, I mean, cutting off, that's almost a cut off your nose to spite your face, where you're like, you are the Bible of surfing. You have the most influential surfer, which is the headline article. That just makes sense. That's the cover. But instead, you're like, wait a second, this temporary paycheck from an advertiser for a surfer that may not even be remembered in 5 years from now. I mean, Andy Irons, as the example, is, but it could have just been some rando.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to run with that instead.
Yeah.
No, there's a legacy at play. Like, you have to keep your eye on the bigger picture at all times, and all decisions have to be filtered through that. But to just make that temporary decision on the big issue, by the way, not only the big issue, the 40th issue, the 40th anniversary issue. This is the 40th anniversary.
Well, what is also at play here is even the publishers' bosses who are going, look, we've done surveys and we have data on what sells, and big blue lefts sell off the newsstand. There was a newsstand concern, and a picture of that guy on the newsstand, they're like, that's not going to sell. Like, we're worried about what sells. It's a business.
So those guys are lacking vision. If you're relying entirely on data and you do not have your finger on the pulse,
Well, no, that's why there was a lot of back and forth here, because it wasn't just the publishing department. It was their bosses, the people that own the magazines, the series of magazines. It might have been Prime Media. I don't know. Do me a favor, open that up, look on there in the masthead. See, was it Evan or Steve Hawk? I think it was Evan.
I think it was Evan too, but I'll check. So while I'm doing that, tell me who was correct. Did the magazine sell?
Oh, no. Believe me, the magazine sold like crazy. It's one of the greatest magazines they ever put out. And of course, the publishing department's taking all the credit for it.
Exactly.
The publishers. It might have been like Kevin Meehan was the publisher, or Rick Irons or something, maybe. Or Palladini, maybe. I don't think it was Palladini, but
Editor, Evan Slater. Consulting editor, Steve Hawk.
who is the publisher?
Peterson Publishing Company.
No, there should be a line for the actual publisher, then a name of an individual who is the publisher.
The group publisher is Doug Palladini.
Yeah, okay, Palladini. Palladini was probably for it.
Yeah.
I sense Palladini
Well,
usually kept his hand. He he would, from what I recall, he would take his hands off of that decision and let the ad sales guys, the guys underneath him, like Meehan and Ricky Irons, fight it out with the editors, Evan Slater and whoever else.
gotcha. Well, the reason I bring it up is the main bulk of the issue was the 25 most influential surfers of all time.
It's
Number one,
such a
of
good issue.
number one, of course, is Duke. But
Yeah.
this conversation comes up every once in a while. Like, Surfing World did an issue this last year. Derek Hine wrote it, and he didn't put them in order, but he just said what his 50 most influential were. But I'm going to read to you the list of 25 from 25 years ago now. This was published in 1999.
Let me
So
guess. Can I guess a couple of them?
I
Or
would like for you to guess. And then also the other kind of conversation here is just uh, how is that list aged? Like, is it still the same as we would make it today? But yes, by all means, guess starting with number one, Duke, and work your way down.
well, the caveat here is that I worked there when this happened, so I kind of remember. But I want to say is two or three is either Grubby Clark or Sean Collins from Surfline.
They're both on the list, but they are not two or three.
So two might be,
Think
I don't know.
surfboard. Think surfboard design for the top five.
Yeah, surfboard design. Simmons.
Simmons is number three. Bob Simmons is number three.
So number two, is that surfboard design as well?
Yeah.
Number two, surfboard design. Vidal Velzy?
Tom Blake.
Oh, of course, yeah. And why do you think Blake's on there without looking?
Why do I think Blake is on there?
Yeah. The fin.
For
Tom Blake
yeah,
invented the fin.
yeah,
Yeah, the NVS fin that we're riding, Tom Blake.
exactly.
There's actually
So-
some controversy about that too, but
About putting him as number two?
no, about is he really the guy that invented the fin? Or there
Oh,
other
I
people
see.
that invented the fin?
I
I don't know too much about that.
This conversation comes up lots of times with various elements of surfboard design where somebody does kind of get attributed with inventing, quote unquote. But when you really dig deeper, it was just in the ether. It was like a logical design evolution that a lot of people had landed on around the same time.
Yeah.
And so things were happening in Australia, things are happening on Hawaii, things are happening in California, things are happening on the East Coast, whatever. And it could have all happened kind of in the same season. But without media being able to convey it in real time, you don't know. Somebody did it in September, somebody did it in October,
Yeah, I just finished an interview with Mitchell Ray from Outer Island Surfboards in Australia, and he mentioned something that I thought was interesting because he started to talk about, in the mid to late 60s when the first down rail surfboards, they were like, and he was like, yeah, we put down rails on these boards, super hard down rails. And I thought he was going to mention Hinson, and he did, but the first name that came out of his mouth was Bunker Spreckles. Which I think is pretty interesting because most of us, including Jerry Lopez, point to Hinson as the guy who, for lack of a better phrase, invented the down rail, the straight down rail, the hard 90-degree hard edge. And I think you can look to Bunker, and I mean, like you say, it's kind of one of these fun conversations that, you could toss it back and forth, and there might not be a completely correct answer. It's still kind of opaque and in the ether, as you say.
Well, I'm going to publish an interview today with Stretch up in Santa Cruz.
Oh, that's going to be, he's got opinions.
Totally does, yeah. And we do talk a lot about surfboard design. And the reason, and it relates to what we're talking about, but also another kind of thought of mine is just how many people on this list we're just one person removed from. Like Stretch's dad grew up in Malibu, started surfing in 1950. So Stretch was born, I think, 58, but his dad was there for the transition from balsa to foam, and Stretch was a part of it. Stretch's dad was good friends with Tom Morey, best friends with Tom Morey, friends with Bob Simmons, like these icons. I mean, Fred Hemmings, Fred Hemmings is still around. He's best friends with Duke. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so we are just we're the sport or the lifestyle surfing is nascent enough to where the pioneers are still available, or we're just one person removed from them and we still have access to interview them to get it on tape direct from the horse's mouth.
And generally they're the best interviews too, because they want to talk about their legacy and they've got a lot to say.
Yeah. And so just to kind of follow up on the stretch conversation, he obviously shapes surfboards, so he's really tuned into design, but he talks about he was riding single fins, transitioning to twin fins, and why that happened, where that happened, how that happened, who made it, what the, and not just the fin, the addition of the fin, but the addition of all the other design elements. Then he talks about being at Swami's, drove down to surf with Gerlach and Glom, and Simon Anderson happened to be there on a thruster, and it was all-time Swamis. And this was a month before he won Bells. And so Stretch is like, what is that thing that you're riding, And then Simon went out there and outsurfed everybody because he was able to push harder, but he witnessed it with his own eyes. And he's like, within a week, I was making thrusters and sending them back up to Santa Cruz. And then within a month, we're making 4 fins, 5 fins, 6 fins because we just realized, why were we stuck on 1 and 2 all along? We finally implemented 3. Well, what can all these and so there was all this experimentation happening all at the same time.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? And the twin fin specifically, like the twin fin was around for a long time, There's some really disgusting, like late 60s twin fins from, not disgusting, but just outdated in their design elements. I don't mean to throw too much shade on them, but that were just, you look at them now and you're like, oh, but like, Hobie, like Mickey Munoz or Terry Martin were making twin fins for Hobie in like 1970, you know, and that's all because of, I mean, not all, but I mean, a lot of it is because of Reno, what Reno was doing with Brewer. Reno had, and it's this discussion at some point kind of clocks over to something that Chris Morrow has always believed and wrote about in the magazine, which is competition. The WSL right now, maybe not, I don't know. But competition back then was moving the needle regarding design. And because MR was shown, Reno showed up at the Worlds with a super short little twin fin and absolutely was flying around on the thing. I'm not sure if it was the one of Joanna that Rolf Arness won or not, but the point is that MR saw it. He's like, wow, what's that thing? And MR began making twin fins. He asked Brewer for some advice and he talked to Reno at length about it, and MR started making twin fins. The first one was that Bumblebee twin fin that he made that was basically completely from seeing Reno surf in a competition. And from there, the twin fin, he refined it and absolutely shredded on it and won 4 world titles in a row. And the entire surf world was on to the twin fin.
Yeah. Well, the other thought was like the twin fin was around for quite a long time before the introduction of a third fin. And so just why did it take so long?
Well, that brings us to a whole nother can of worms, which is Bonzers were around. There's 3 fin, like I've always said, look, here's how you need to make the differentiation is that the Bonzer was around in the early 70s, probably 1970, something like that. I'm not an expert on the exact timeline. So there was 3 fins on a board. And by the way, there was 3 fins on boards before the Bonzer. I believe Brewer put these little side bites on single fins. And so there was 3 fins on a board. What Simon did is he created the thruster, which is different than the 3 fin. There was 3 fins on a board, but Simon made a twin fin, a thruster by adding the same size fin to the back area. Now, again, I'm going to get in hot water with some people who are going to say, Scott, you got it all wrong. And they're probably right. Maybe this conversation can be amended to be a little bit more historically accurate. But I think it's important that we determined that 3 fins were on a board before Simon did it.
Perfect. Well, then the conversation with Stretch is the board that Simon was riding, totally flat bottom. So it was the first iteration of a thruster, but quite different than what we all use today as a thruster. And he attributes Xanadu as the deep single concave thruster bottom, which then allows two rocker lines basically on the board and really allows a lot more dynamic surfing, you know? So these are all individual steps. And it's interesting, like I said, to have direct access to the people who lived it and why. And again, stretch is just one opinion. So certainly an Australian person who went through the same timeline will have their own version of this, but it's still, and so it's not definitive, but it is data that we can at least use and
Right.
triangulate with other data. And so to be able to get it direct from the horse's mouth is, I think, really, really cool.
I do too, especially the design stuff. I think
Yeah.
that's, and this interview I did, excuse me, with Mitchell Ray was fascinating because he was at Lennox with George and Greeno. And so he was there when McTavish and those guys were there with, and so he's like, everybody, they saw George surf on that knee board with the flex. And they're like, I want some of that, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he went down, Mitchell Ray with Outer Island Surfboards went down this huge flex tail. And he's still going down it. Like he's been refining this design for decades. But I bring him up also because of the concave thing. Like, you know, he'll tell you that he was doing concaves a long time ago. And
Yeah.
you know, who did the first concave? Who knows? You
Right.
know, good
Yeah.
question. But
Yeah.
for a long time, they were convex rolled bottoms. And at some point, somebody, you know, there was a little bit of V, and then somebody said, why don't we just even take the V out and just make this thing completely concave? And then we'll just have two places laminar flow on the rail line and nothing, no water running down the middle of the board, just lift.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway,
Pretty interesting. So we could go on forever, but do you want
yeah.
to get back to this list real quick?
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. You mentioned number 4, Greeno.
Greeno, that makes sense. Yeah.
Greeno's number 4. So it goes Duke, Blake, Simmons, Greeno, Bruce Brown in the 5th position. And of
Okay,
course,
cultural one, right?
that's a cultural one. He is sharing the good news with the world.
Yeah.
John Severson, number 6, for a similar reason.
Another cultural one. Okay.
Gidget.
I was going to say Gidget's going to pop up here.
Gidget's number 8, if I'm
Is
correct,
it
or 7.
Gidget the movie or Gidget the person?
So it does not say Kathy Kroner. It says Gidget.
Okay, so that's another cultural one. I think that's super important. Not that Kathy doesn't deserve, but from a cultural standpoint, from the idea that there was a book and there was a movie and there was a TV series, but first and foremost, there was a book. And this changed everything. This made the 1950s sort of beach blanket bingo take off.
Yeah. There would have been no book, no movie, of course. And so an entire generation might not have looked at the beach. There would have been no surf music, no Beach Boys, no fun, 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 no good vibrations. Without her, there would have been no California Xanadu at all. So I think they're talking about the movie and the impact, or yeah, Kathy and the movie and the impact as
And then
one.
on the flip side of that, the reaction to that cultural movement was screw the commercialism, black wetsuits, single fins, localism in California, like the whole like 1972 to 78, 79 era was kind of a reaction in some ways.
Yeah. Well, Simon Anderson, number 8, Jerry
Okay.
Lopez, number 9, Gordon Clark, number 10.
Oh, Gordon's number 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm going to save the back
I thought Sean
15.
Collins was in there.
Sean Collins, 25.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're right. Good memory. I'm going to save the back 15. We can address it next week since we're
Yeah,
running out
there's
of
so
time here.
much good stuff to talk about there. But yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. That's good stuff.
Well, also a follow-up from last week, we talked a little bit about the situation in Puerto Rico with the bike path. I got a note from a listener, Bill Rosenblatt, longtime listener, Bill Rosenblatt, who actually came out for the Boardroom show this past year, and I got to see him in person. But he
Yeah, I
said,
got the same note, by the way, and I appreciate Bill reaching out to us and giving this insight because I don't know too much about it. So fill me in.
yeah, he directed us to the website that you should reference, basically, if you want to support or just learn more. It's called Paseo Responsible. But I'll link to it in today's show notes. But he said, have you seen what's going on in Puerto Rico? at Rincon. If you could mention it and steer people towards this website for information and possibly to donate, that would be appreciated. I'm happy to give you details if you want. Surfrider also took a stance and made a statement about it this week, and they said the proposed path runs along the beach at Tres Palmas Marine Reserve, a federally registered, community created marine protected area, and one of Surfrider's first ocean protection victories established nearly 20 years ago. The reserve protects habitat for um, elkhorn coral, hawksbill turtles, and an abundance of other marine wildlife, and is home to one of the most iconic surf breaks in Puerto Rico. The path runs through the community, and a community-led reforestation project that plays a key role in controlling erosion, managing stormwater, and capturing carbon. Surfrider and their coalition partners and the local community strongly oppose this project as planned and demand that construction immediately stop so that plans can be modified to eliminate the harmful impacts of these precious natural areas. The solution is straightforward: work with instead of against the local community to design a coastal bike path that truly meets the needs and protects their resources. Pretty simple.
Right on. So the link to that, if you want to sign that petition, David will have that in these show notes, and definitely go and do that because let's keep things the way they are.
Yeah. Paseo responsible. And then also, of course, Surfrider is actively involved, and they're great to become a member of, support their work because they're involved in stuff like that. I mean, they're involved in so much. It's crazy, from your local beach all the way through to Washington, D.C. So surfrider.org to support that. And then also, I just wanted to mention Noah Deane's new film, Horse, just got dropped on Stab exclusively. And this relates to what you were talking about. I thought about this when you were talking about the magazine holding back photos for a year to use on the cover of the big issue. We've thought that that is all done with. We've thought that immediacy is key, but there's a few surfers and brands still um, living by the rule of scarcity. And Noah Deane is one of them. Noah Deane has spent a bunch of money making a couple of films in recent years, not dropping clips on Instagram, saving those clips, and then doing once a year film projects. And they do kind of outshine everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is still being done. It's kind of hard to do, but if you go to some out of the way locations where there's nobody else filming, you can certainly pull it off. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that.
I mean, look, John Florence lives by this philosophy as well, it seems. You know, he doesn't share all of his life all the time. And then when he drops something, everybody's mind is blown. And Noah Deane, I feel like, is right there doing it too. And so I think the caveat, if you want to live by this scarcity principle, is you have to be supremely talented surfing, number one. And then number two is partner with an art maker, an artistic filmmaker who is going to live up to the standard of your surfing, basically, with the art that they're producing from it, because Horse is a beautiful watch.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing. I saw it pop up on my Stab stuff, but I haven't watched it yet. But I'm looking forward to getting fired up. I feel like he's going to fire me up.
The clips are unreal. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one after another, from crazy barrel slabs to insane, huge airs. Any one of those would have made his Instagram, would have gone viral on Instagram, but they're all in one film for 30 minutes. So go support that. Go check it out.
All right. Well, we will. I'm searching here for the Julian Wilson comeback tour results, but I guess I thought for some reason he surfed in an event. I thought I saw something pop up on my Insta.
He surfed like a small regional event, but the Challenger series hasn't started yet.
So he surfed a qualifying event just to kind of get his feet in the water, I guess, is what happened.
Exactly. Yeah,
Was it the
exactly.
Genesis Health Fitness at Newcastle? It must have been.
That might have been that. Yeah, actually.
And I'm looking here, he's got a trophy in his hand.
I think he won it.
I'm looking, I'm reading, and they make it hard to figure
Well,
this.
don't worry about it. It's inconsequential to the qualification results. It was just
No, I
more for
know,
him to
but
get his feet wet.
I mean, I'm kind of like following Julian Wilson's comeback with a
Okay.
magnifying glass, I want to know.
But
Each
Put your
step
head
of the way, like, so he's definitely got a trophy in his hand. It looks like he did win it. So,
put your headlamp on.
okay, yes, good one. Well done.
So my Duke of the week,
Yeah,
Tosh Tudor.
mine too. Tosh Tudor's insane. Like his Instagram. Remember, I was earlier in the show. I'm like, I want to talk Instagram. Tosh Tudor's winning Instagram. Man. That guy, he puts up incredible clips, and they're just next level mental. Every one.
So he's basically doing his time, doing the hard yards at Pipe. He's in Hawaii. It's late season and he's still there. And then the waves turn on. They were great a couple of days ago, 2 days, 3 days ago. And he's out there getting the roll in bombs. Like one of them, the most impressive one, it was a roll in to one of those ones that tapers into this narrow escape and then just fire hoses out. And it's like, you have to be putting in the yards to get that wave.
I totally agree, and he certainly is. And it's funny, when I was scouring for the Peter Townend quote earlier in the show, PT mentions that back then they would show up on the North Shore in October and they wouldn't leave until April 1st. I mean, they stayed the whole season. Hawaii was the most important place to be for the most important reasons, which is to show that you know how to handle Hawaii. And Tosh is kind of following in those footsteps. He's there. I don't see him around here at all. And, I think he lives here. I don't know. But he's
Yeah.
traveling. I mean, he's surfing Hawaii, and you're right. He's putting in the time.
Well, then in addition to those individual clips, he's also putting out YouTube edits every month or something like that. That's like a 15-minute, 20-minute thing. And so, I mean, he's got to be the most barreled guy after Nathan Florence in 2025 so far. So
And he seems to have
impressive.
a sort of refreshing humility too, like that I really appreciate.
Well, the other clip that he just posted yesterday, another crazy barrel at pipe, he mentions in the comment or in the caption how heinous his claim was. He came out and exalted just naturally, but then by the time he was publishing it on Instagram, regretted it. It came natural to him, but then he was like, "Oh my God,
I said,
embarrassing."
let it, dude, you're stoked. There's nothing
Like,
wrong with being stoked.
no, but I appreciate the humility and hindsight too.
Yeah.
I appreciate both things.
Yeah.
So Duke of the Week, great job, Tosh. Keep it up. And then my final must-see moment presented by Treeswax. Ivan Florence's slab in Chile that he got.
Yeah.
Nathan Florence teased it. They haven't put out the YouTube video yet, but he teased it with a couple of clips on Instagram and said, first stop of the slab tour for 2025. And it shows one clip of him getting a good wave, but then Ivan's is insane. Ivan's is double overhead. He takes off under the lip, way deep, like falls into the barrel. From the moment he gets to his feet, he's already getting barreled and just navigates this freight train. It was super, super sketchy location.
So gnarly. That's a great clip. There's some good stuff on Instagram, and certainly what Nathan posted of his brother is one of them.
Those guys are killing it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, David, look, we've said a lot. Until next time, adios and aloha.